Avengers Endgame. I'm just so overwhelmed. Like, I can't. If you haven't seen this, this is just the perfect film. Like, this is a love letter to the rest of the MCU and just makes for the best possible ending to the Infinity Saga. Also, what are you doing clicking on a video like this when you haven't even seen the film? You're literally asking for it to get spoiled for you. I'm not the kind of person who just spoils things to be a bad person. Like, some of you on Twitter seem to think I am, which really hurts to know that people think that of me. But yes, there are spoilers in this video. A lot of spoilers. Was this film everything I expected it to be and more? Not exactly. Mostly because it just wasn't even close to what I expected. Like, I actually wrote an outline for a prediction video script that I was going to make last week, but didn't, and it couldn't have been further off. My prediction is Avengers Endgame will end with all the Infinity Stones being destroyed. I mean, technically they were destroyed, but most of the film was actually doing the opposite and collecting the Infinity Stones. So I went on to predict which Avenger would destroy each stone, mostly relying on Captain Marvel destroying the Space Stone because she was kind of made from the Space Stone in the way that Wanda was made from the Mind Stone, and she was able to destroy the Mind Stone because it wasn't a very good theory, just that's why I didn't make it. See, what I didn't anticipate is that Endgame is very different to the rest of the MCU films with what can only be described as a very time travel centric story. And I'll admit, personally, I'm just not the biggest fan of time travel stories, like, never have been. They just hurt my head. I guess some people find it fun exploring the idea of going back in time and stopping your parents from meeting and causing yourself to never be born and therefore couldn't have gone back in time in the first place, but that just breaks all the laws of physics and time, and I just hate it. Like, when they first mentioned the time machine, I'll admit, I was worried, and I don't even think I knew what was going on my first viewing while they were time traveling. Despite their persistent making fun of time travel in movies such as Back to the Future, X-Men, and The Terminator, making it very clear changing the past doesn't affect their future, I was still so confused when they all came back and the future hadn't been drastically changed by what they'd done. I now feel like an idiot for having these thoughts. In my defense, I went to the midnight release, and that's a lot to get your head around at 3 AM. But yeah, it took me 2 viewings to really get what happened, and I guess there are some people out there who actually listened and therefore understood it first viewing, causing this video to seem completely pointless to you, but I'm willing to bet I'm not the only idiot out there. So that's why I'm making this video explaining the Avengers Endgame timeline. And I guess now would be a good time to comment, video actually starts at 2 minutes 29, because I've been rambling the entire time. You see, the confusion comes in because the time travel we're used to seeing in movies that Ant-Man refers to throughout is known as the grandfather paradox type of time travel. Which is, well, as I've covered, if you go back in time and kill your grandfather and stop one of your parents from being born, you can't have existed to go back in time in the first place. I mean, there's a paradox caused by any action that alters the past in a way that would contradict the future events, getting someone to go back and time travel. That sentence made no sense to anyone other than me, did it? Okay, cool. It isn't really important anyway because the time travel in the Avengers doesn't work like this. And thank God, because that would have ruined the movie. And not just in terms of timeline issues, it would have probably sucked if that had been the case, and this movie didn't suck. You see, the way time travel works in Endgame is that when they travel back, they're entering an alternate reality that was the same as theirs, but now changed by their actions in that timeline. So even though their time traveling caused Loki to escape and Peter Quill to get knocked out, that affected the alternate realities rather than their own. And when they collected all the stones and brought them back to their reality, they'd been gone for like 5 seconds, so obviously nothing had changed. At least in their reality. The other realities, not so much. However, this is where the most important scene in the entire film when it comes down to this comes into play. Because when Bruce Banner is talking to the Ancient One, she explains that while stealing the stones from their reality might have a positive effect on his reality, it could and probably would have a terrible effect on hers. So as you may remember, he makes a promise that all the stones will be returned to where they were taken from after they've used them to help their reality, and she goes, "A promise isn't good enough, but Doctor Strange literally gave the stone away." Wait, what? Yeah. Okay, cool, it's yours. And of course, at the very end, Captain America does return all the stones to the time they were taken, or maybe a few hours later, I don't know, give or take a few hours probably. Honestly, they should have shown him returning the stones during the film, because like, if you're telling me he encountered no problems while doing that, I don't believe you. Like, they surely, I get the film was already 3 hours long, but they could have made a spin-off film out of that. What, like Captain America 4, The Returning of the Stones? I'd go see it. However, the stealing of the stones wasn't the only thing that occurred that could have had detrimental effects on the timeline. Like, just in the 2012 timeline alone, Loki escapes with the Tesseract, which would have just completely changed all the events that happened after that film. Like, there's a good chance Loki is still alive in that reality. But that doesn't change the fact that he is officially dead in the MCU. You've also got Steve Rogers, who now knows that Bucky is still alive, and also unknowingly convinced the Hydra members that he supports them and is on their side. Which means the Winter Soldier movie would have played out very differently in that reality, and I kind of want to know how that happened now. Like Captain America 5, the Winter Soldier in that other reality that played out really differently because everything was different. I'm just handing you ideas right now, Marvel. There's also Hank Pym getting 4 of his particles stolen in 1970, and Howard Stark getting advice on how to raise Tony Stark from Tony Stark, which may seem like minor things, but the butterfly effect's real, and 50 years later, things could have played through very differently because of that. Then there's Thor, who stole his hammer from 2013, which would have led to Thor losing to the Dark Elves in that reality, and wait, no, Cap brought the hammer back, didn't he? Never mind, forget that one. I guess finally, and most importantly, in the 2014 reality Nebula and War Machine travel to, the Guardians would have never got together, meaning Xandar would have been decimated, at least a few years earlier than it would have got decimated anyway. And that wasn't even the important thing. You see, in this reality, Thanos from 2014 learnt about the Avengers' plans because of a glitch in Nebula's system recording thing. Which, I've got to be honest, is maybe the most realistic thing in the entire MCU. Like, try and put your phone back to 2014. It messes it up. Just go on any app, like, where you have to go on the internet in 2014. It just completely messes the phone up. It's so accurate. Anyway, with the knowledge of the Avengers' plan, Thanos from 2014 uses his Nebula to capture the Nebula from 2023, switch them, sends his Nebula back, and then she sets the course for him to travel forward to their universe in 2023. Which of course leads to the final fight with the Avengers. Nebula is able to kill the 2014 version of herself without ceasing to exist because, again, different timelines, so that was never actually her, it's just her from another reality. And when Thanos loses and Tony snaps his fingers, causing everyone from that 2014 reality to disappear other than Gamora, because I guess they need a plot for Guardians 3, there would be no more Thanos in that reality. So yeah, long story short, they did mess with a few of the alternate Earths past and change the directions they're going in completely in some cases. But I do believe it was for the greater good. This is the one future in 14,605 where they win. Like, it became a joke after Infinity War that they only had one victory in 14 million outcomes. Like, couldn't they have just chopped off his arm? But no, as Tony works out in Endgame, this is the one future where they win. And that might mean not just in this reality, but every reality. And with that information, the 1 in 14 million chance makes a lot more sense, especially when you consider that throwaway line in Infinity War where Doctor Strange describes himself as the protector of reality.
What is your job exactly besides making balloon animals?
Protecting your reality, douchebag.
Which is why this movie just works perfectly, except for Steve. You see, at the very end of the film, when Cap goes back one last time to return the stones and the hammer, he never returns through the time machine, but then there's an 100-year-old Cap sitting on the bench who's lived his life out with Peggy, and this creates the only real paradox in the entire film. With the logic of time travel in this film, that must have all happened in an alternate reality. But there's still a Captain America sitting on the bench at the end, so it doesn't make sense. How could he have returned without returning? It's a pretty big plot hole. Until you realize the Cap at the end isn't Cap. And I think the movie wants us to know this, because if you remember, his shield was snapped in half by Thanos in the final battle, but when he gives it to Falcon, it's pretty much spotless. You see, it isn't our Cap, it's another Cap who also traveled back in time from another timeline. An alternate timeline where the timeline we know is an alternate timeline to them. I guess in their version of events, Cap's shield doesn't get snapped in half, so he can pass it on. But the constant, seemingly between all of the timelines, is that Cap always goes back to spend his life with Peggy, and then comes back to where he left so he can pass his shield on to Falcon. And therefore, when Peggy mentions having a husband in the Winter Soldier,
he saved over 1,000 men, including the man who would become my husband, as it turned out.
She's referring to Captain America the entire time! Just, you know, the Steve we meet at the end from another timeline. Does that make sense? I hope so. I've tried to explain this as well as I could. I don't know how many people were confused after the film, but if you were, I hope this video helped a little. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. Special thank you to Zach, Kyle, Peyton, Mats, and Amanda for sponsoring me on Patreon. If you also want to check me out on Patreon, there are some great rewards in the link in the description down below. You can subscribe to my channel by clicking here. You can watch another video by clicking here. You can check out my other social medias here and in the description down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. You know, I said there are going to be lots of spoilers in this video, but I didn't even mention once the Iron Man